Oh, Drunk Me ordered super glue last night. I wonder why.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Oh,
We're off to a rip-roaring start, everybody.
This is perfect.
Hi.
do you know why Drunk Me ordered super?
So that you can finish your Gundam.
Oh, that might be why.
Or so that you can fix your mask.
That is probably the mask. It's probably the mask. Hi, good morning, everyone. Well, you know, since we're just lingering on conversations they know nothing about. Oh, my breakfast is ordered. I'm Noir. Welcome to the morning ritual. We've got an amazing guest. You can take it from there, Anita. I'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Anita. I'm your other co-host. While Noir is out getting breakfast. We have an amazing guest today. We've got the one, the only, the amazing, the effervescent Sam DeLeve. Oh, shoot. I realized that I messed up and I did not put Sam's name on the overlay. Ha 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 ha.
No one knows who I am. I'm a complete mystery. Hello, I'm a complete mystery. Role-playing performer and variety streamer throughout the Twitcher net.
Now, it's on the overlay. I am trying to keep it together.
I love this perfectly this is the most morning a show could possibly be. And I love that it is authentic to itself.
I am sad, but maybe I am a little in mourning.
You're in mourning?
Well, it's a morning show.
And here, I didn't bring my proper goth blacks.
That's why I'm wearing the gray.
You said that with just the absolute softest Batman voice, and it's delightful.
The softest Batman voice. We're already off to a great start. You good?
Got soft Batman voice?
Yeah, it was.
No, actually.
What was it? The super glue?
No, they said they delivered it, but it's not outside. So I'm just gonna be quietly fretting about that because that was my coffee this morning.
Boo.
Oh, goodness gracious. Welcome. This is going to be a very special episode indeed.
We're on Noir's coffee watch. Everybody start the clock.
I'm gonna be completely cool. I'm fine without my coffee. I'm good.
It'll get there.
I'm so angry.
Believe in yourself.
Insight check.
As long as you don't roll a one, I'm fucking pissed.
Okay, I've got the stopwatch. We're setting a stopwatch. We're gonna see how long it takes for Noir to get their coffee. Coffee watch. Minute watch. Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I have been a professional tabletop role-playing gamer since January 2017. I have worked with studios like Saving Throw and Geek and Sundry, where I think I might have done some of my biggest works with Eric's TTRPG, the Doctor Who RPG. We played Shield of Tomorrow, the first Star Trek RPG I was in with Geek and Sundry, and Callisto 6, the cyberpunk superhero RPG that I played in and co-created and wrote the setting for. I've been in a bunch of different things. Some of them are comedic, like Tempting Fate, which was 5 seasons of lasers and feelings across various intellectual properties, most of which I did not know because I am a cultural vacuum. And
you save it for bird and dinosaur facts, though. And
right.
Facts.
See, science we've got because we have skill points. They're called time. And so some people spent it with movies and like learning things that now they make references to. And here in this industry with many creative people, professional writers and actors and directors who as part of that training have studied many cultural things with their skill points. I know bird shit.
Thank you for making being a slacker and just watching movies sound magical.
Hey, to me it is, and it is incredibly useful in this platform because it gives you a very broad context of story to subconsciously draw on in improv. It gives you a subconscious sense of structure and pattern and how to and archetypes and all of those things that help make stories satisfying. I think it's one of the reasons we see so many creatives thriving in this space now, as tabletop role-playing games have moved beyond board games where you play one meeple and board games where you play one meeple but also cry about it.
I love when games make me cry. That's my favorite thing.
It's like, lovely stuff, and it's historically novel. Like, it used to be board games, and then the theater kids got hold of it, and we haven't really let go, have we?
It's true.
In all fairness, theater kids don't know what enough is enough.
We don't. Not even a little.
We made Glee last for more than one season, which I think, we still owe the world an apology for.
Artie does something to me.
Okay, you picked the one good one. Okay, no, there are two. There are two. No, there are more than... Okay, I kind of like a lot of the class. There are three people that are just insufferable. Will, Leah Michelle's character, and
Rachel.
Basically anybody that played a jock. If you were a jock at one point and then you stopped being a jock and joined the Glee Club, I hated you.
Okay, one, do cheerleaders count as jocks? Because that is extreme sports.
No.
It's extreme. I mean, and like temperamentally, I would say there's a lot of jock overlap. But two, I'm sorry, are we going to say Artie is okay? Artie, I am putting on a wheelchair while being a non-disabled person yet a freaking again, and invoking every single stereotype that I spend a good chunk of my career as a creative fighting against, taking advantage of the fact that tabletop role-playing games don't have to go through typical Hollywood greenlighting processes in order to tell stories that combat the very tropes embodied by, yes, Artie of Glee. Go suck it, Artie. Yes, I said
I legitimately did not know Artie was not actually disabled.
There's a whole episode where he gets up and dances because
I probably stopped watching.
You're a lucky. I hate watched those episodes specifically because I was very, very mad. But no, that actor is like a dancer, and so they made a whole dream sequence just so the poor, sad Wheeler boy, who was so sad that he could not dance, that he put tap wheels on, and I still can't figure out what in the engineering fuck that is.
Time out. Did you just say the words to me? Tap wheels?
Oh, Noir, I did. I did say that. That did happen.
I pardon my ignorance. I just want to make sure. This is not an actual thing because I'm about to laugh.
How could it be
a hearty?
How could it's a wheel? It's a wheel.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
We're off to a great start. Wow.
Good morning. So this is what happened. That's theater kids gone horribly wrong. But again, like, hey, I was tying it back, Anita. I was tying it back, and that's why role-playing games are important.
Ryan Murphy must be stopped.
Please, someone. We need a hero.
TTRPGs at their very core are just what humans are all about, which is telling stories. From our earliest days, we have always told stories and created a shared narrative, and this is just a continuation of that. And any media is just people telling stories.
I mean, I honestly, I will make the argument that I think just natural collaborative storytelling, it's the origin of it all. Like, it is the most stripped down and honest form of art. And I love it. Like it feeds a lot of my improv soul because it's just like you and I are just gonna sit in a room and just make some shit up together. And that is how all of your favorite things exist, like were created.
I think it's why it has become so wildly popular among so many wildly creative people, because it just hits that story thing collaboratively with other creative beings, meaning you get to like bounce off of external brains, and it's pretty unfiltered. It's everything that's satisfying to like a creative brain. It's a dopamine medium for a bunch of creative people. And so you see so many artists from so many fields now who are like, oh wow, do that. And so there are so many performers so excited to do this work because it's just like the least filtered version of actually pretty powerful storytelling.
Like I still remember in one of my very early home games, I played with like an artist, like they could draw and paint, and you know, I was a musician, and like we created, like, you know, I remember having conversations like I can almost hear what, you know, this theme would be for this moment, and they were just like, yeah, and I've got the picture so clear in my head, and just watching, like my favorite thing is whenever I'm in a show and fan art happens, it's just like,
the dopamine hits.
Yes, we inspired that. That is something that we helped create that our artistic limitations couldn't manifest the way that theirs could. And I love that.
I learned to draw specifically to do TTRPG fan art of like awesome. Rare shows that wouldn't get fan art. And I wanted fan art and I couldn't draw. Like literally, I never ever drew. I hated art class, all that.
Fantastic though.
Thank you. That's so incredibly kind. There's like, there are some real old tweets that are just like, I love comparing how incredibly bad I was because it's a great illustration of the thing I was saying earlier about time being skill points. I was so bad. Bad enough that it's clear I have no natural talent or aptitude. And yet purely by application of time, you can be good at a thing. And I found like, there are so many creative endeavors where we talk about talent in a way that can be so discouraging of like, do I have it? Should I be doing this if I don't? That taking up creative skills where you discover, actually, I can just throw time at the problem and acquire skill is so comforting.
If you smash
talent
your head
is upsetting
against a wall enough times, you're going to break through the wall eventually.
You'll be better than you were before. And gosh, that just, it gives you enough to get out of your own dang brain and just do things, and then you get better. I don't know. So I entirely see the fan art is great. I love fan art is how I feel like a thing wins.
It's like I did something that made you so happy or enamored that you decided to draw it.
You gave it time.
You decided to take the time to capture it.
Right. You have so few hours on this earth, and they can be put toward things with skill point, and where you're putting your skill point is with thoughts of a thing that we did.
You could have ate a taco, but instead you could
have ate a taco, and hopefully you as an artist are so skilled that you can draw and eat taco. This is the highest level. This is ascension.
This is definitely the peak. The pinnacle of creation.
Can you tell that I have no knowledge of how art works? I'm like, clearly to eat a taco, you must not draw.
I mean, I can't I feel like I tend to not two-fist my creative and gustatory endeavors.
You know, there is a bit of hypocrisy I take part in because I am fundamentally convinced that I can't draw, but I always tell people that there's no such thing as not being able to sing. Because everybody, like, singing is, it's like, it's basic. It's super duper, like, everybody can do it. And, you know, everybody goes, well, I can't carry a note. I can't, and I'm just like, Bob Dylan exists. You have no excuse.
Bob Dylan is the counterpoint to just throwing time at a problem, I admit.
Bob Dylan said you're gonna fucking deal with this voice. And you know what? He's one of the greatest songwriters to ever exist.
That's because at his core, he's also a storyteller.
You're right.
Wrapping it back around.
Look
I observe what you have done in this place.
One of us has to be professional.
I always, as a professional role-playing gamer in a world where that is so niche that most people don't understand what it means, have insisted that on my business card it's just professional something.
Professional disaster is currently what your Zoom.
That is right currently. Well, so I was in a virtual play about Dungeons and Dragons recently. She Kills Monsters. It was an off-Broadway show at one point, but a friend I had met through doing that Star Trek RPG was directing it as a Zoom play, and we had a talk back, and they wanted us to have our names and what we do. Remember this name in future meetings.
It was clicked on.
It was. And I could fix it, but it is true enough that I haven't yet.
In the most loving way possible, it is so your brand.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Because if you equate puns to disasters...
It's gotten worse over time, again, from application of time. I've just done that. So many people tolerate me that I have become more of myself, which is genuinely like, before I got on the internet, there was a much more curated version of me.
And all we can hope for is that you become more genuine. Like, you become the best version.
The lovely thing about this space is like how people embrace the weird in each other, because that is more unique and beautiful than conforming ourselves into a societally prescribed, pruned version of ourselves, living as, I don't know, the topiary of convention. But
that's too short to be normal.
I got on the internet and was kind of myself a little bit, just a little bit. And people were like, hey, fuck yeah. Oh, wait, can we swear?
Oh, you can swear. This is 18 plus stream. You're good.
Okay, cool.
There's no fucking way I would host the fucking show.
I didn't want to assume. I hypothesized. But then it's just a little more and a little more. And now I am very, I am very nerdy, and I like science, and words sound like other words sometimes, and I have low inhibition about pointing it out.
See, that's the thing, though. There's the deadly combination of you being brilliant, like you're incredibly smart, and then like listen, and like a lot of people don't do the listening bit. And so, I think that's also what I enjoy about playing games with you, is that you listen. And so the magic of playing with somebody that listens is that they show you the significance in things that you did that you might have just kind of did. Like, like a lot of times, like I want to say about 40% of the things that we say in TTRPGs are important, and the rest is us trying not to go and it takes other people to go, no, actually that 40% that you think is important is actually 100%. And I love that about playing with you. And it's okay. We love hearing the doggos.
The producers have opinions, and sometimes from behind camera they offer them. But it's true. As individuals and as a collective, I think one of the things about this improvised medium is when you're scripted, you can always know where your setup and your payoff are. You know that if you need a payoff, you should implant a setup earlier in the story. And this is an improvised medium. So what we do at the table is figure out how to pay off whatever our actions have now set up. And that is a garden of forking paths. You can start from, you know, a bard who can't talk to people. And that can become a story of someone becoming a bard who's good at talking to people by like putting themselves in uncomfortable situations and trying real hard. Or they can decide, hey, you know what? Bard was something I felt like I needed to be, but it wasn't actually. And then they go off and they become a paladin or something. You know, they just go in some different direction. We're always trying to find the way that makes our story retroactively meaningful. And it's a thing we do individually as players, but it's also, I think, a thing we do for each other. The highest order thing someone can do at a table is be generous to your fellow players and then hope that they are to you, and you just get a circle of story, because it's more organic storytelling. And it's truer to the fact that fundamentally tabletop role-playing games are, I think, a storytelling medium with a dizzyingly high skill ceiling, but also people who are or have the potential to become friends at a table, admiring each other's creative brains.
Exactly. And I did like a video about, you know, just trying to get newbies ready to experience things at the table. And one of the things that I advise is that you need to leave a disrespectful table, because when you're at a table, and especially when you're at a really good table, you are showing a piece of yourself, whether you mean to or not. And if you're at a good table, it lures out the more sincere parts of you. Yeah. Like if you're at a table with people that are respectful and engaging and make you feel safe enough to not hide, because a lot of the times we have ideas that we don't say because we're worried that, you know, somebody's gonna go, that's stupid. And even though they're talking to the character, there's a bit of that bleed in there that's just like, well, I don't want to be stupid. So
you need to be creatively disinhibited and be in an environment that's conducive to that.
Right. And if you're playing at a table that supports and nurtures that, then you can't help but end up becoming friends with the people that you're playing with, because it's just like, hey, you know that paladin that I was playing, well, here are the parts of me that created that. Here's you know, the trauma, the courage, the bravery that put that all together.
Here are the pieces that I feel inside me that I wish I could express more accurately outside in the real life, and here's that part of me that is in that character.
Yeah.
Do you because like
you
it?
Can't.
I made this. Do you like it?
Right. Because the things that we play, especially like the person of it, not, you know, the buff hit with stick, because those are easy to narrate, but like, you know, I always say you can't play a higher wisdom than you have as a player. You can't be more social than you are. You can only describe that socialism. That like when I'm at the table with someone, especially over all of the hours that we spend, it's so many. Our shows are so long that you see people. At a certain point, you're all being like fairly disinhibited, and you see who they are through where they spend their focus, what they're interested in. And like my favorite players are the ones who, when they're at the table, are thinking of what can I do for this other person through my character. And like, there's such kind people. It's why I can interact with a performer like Gina DeFivo and really just only ever spend time at the table because we're like working artists. Like we get to the gig, we do the gig together and we leave, like very little out of character time, but just know that I adore her because I've seen through her character who this person is. Kind and generous and thoughtful. And well, actually, I feel like that's a description of my experience at a table with someone here.
Oh, Anita.
No. I've only been in one. Even the more games with Sam than me. Is you.
Yeah. So that brings us.
What's the coffee watch at? We're at 22 minutes.
They refunded it.
Boo.
I'm gonna order again when we take a break. But that kind of brings me to something that I've been absolutely fascinated in. And it's one of the things that I think that one of the problems with our culture is that we don't explore the different types of love that exist. And I think TTRPG is magic in the sense that there is, I believe, a love that is inherently unique to this hobby in the way that it is felt, in the way that it is expressed. And there are sure signs that this love exists to varying degrees, but there are sure signs that this love exists. And I have been I have been writing love songs kind of in that vein.
They're incredibly sweet.
Yeah, they're okay. But like there are universal signs of love that we recognize at the table. Like and I wanted to see if I could express it. Like I'm not sure how much you GM, but if you've ever rolled just a number of 20s against your players, I think the act of fudging some of those 20s to be like something else, I feel like that's as big of a love sign as like bumping into somebody with a bunch of baguettes and oranges. Like, you know?
Yeah. I do think I have seen it in other creative, like, I agree. There's a sort of special species of creative love because there is emotional vulnerability that creates emotional intimacy. And we do that through this fairly disinhibited medium. And so that forges bonds. I think like it does feel kind of like Theater Kids on a production. Like, I think it is, that is a cousin. Which it only speaks to this as like a broader thing in like creative love. And this perhaps so distilled because we are more transparent about our bleed in TTRPGs than perhaps other endeavors. There's more of us because it has to be something that can be improvised and therefore emotionally accessible enough to us that it's just a thing that we can draw upon. But it's beautiful. Like, shocking no one, I am a teacher's pet of a creature, and that carries over at a table. I'm here to like try to make other people make a like face with the things that I do. Like, if I can like delight other people and make them feel things, like I'm always performing to my table. And the fact that there is like a VOD and an audience is great for the purpose of creating a text for all of the retroactive assignment of meaning and like the permanency that creates. But no, really, are you happy right now? Are we doing nice things for each other? Because it's love.
This is probably the most wholesome episode we have ever had. I gotta go.
Time to change that.
Let's pivot.
No, I'm kidding. So I kind of want to get more into your history because you've been playing these games for a while, and I've kind of seen you pop up everywhere. So how did you? Because you got started before. Like, I want to say that the Panda Express really opened the floodgates, and people were just like, "Fuck it, I'm at home all the time anyway. I might as well give this a try." But you were like pre Periscope. So like, when did you get one of my favorite things that we as a society have collectively agreed is to disrespect the shit out of this panini. So like,
yes, I mean, for better or worse, that does seem to be universal for sure. But yes, no. So I got started back in January 2017. For context, I think that's probably around Critical Role Campaign 1 in the episode 30s to 40s. Just contextualizing sort of when in the era of TTRPGs that happened. Basically, Geek and Sundry, the production company that originally financed Critical Role, had a couple of other TTRPG shows that it tried to do at the time. They were fairly experimenting with like, what's a trend, what's going to work? And there were some things that they were doing alongside Critical Role, projects like Foreververse, that was Ivan Van Norman, who now is just like huge in the space. Erika Ishii was on that show. I think that was the first stream game that Erika Ishii might have played on. There were a whole lot of projects like that at the time. But I didn't know about that. I knew about Geek and Sundry as a nerd who watched YouTube. I was at an opera festival and my roommate showed me The Guild in like 2010.
I remember The Guild.
And it was actually ultimately very big for me because Teal Scherer's character was the opposite of Artie. A wheelchair user played by, yes, an actual wheelchair user, and evil about it in the most delightful and agency supporting ways, rather than the traditional trope of the evil cripple that we see with like a character like Davros or like any of those like really ugly disability tropes. No. Teal Scherer's character was perfect. And actually, we're effectively chair twins. We have almost identical builds. Which is just an entire side note, but utterly delightful. So I was aware of Geek and Sundry as a production company through that stuff. But that was all that I knew. I lived in Los Angeles and I was a contemporary dancer and a competitive athlete. I had recently retired from national and like a little bit of international competition as a swimmer, and I was like flirting with a couple sports. I was flirting with track, I was flirting with rowing, and I had tried murder ball, and I love this sport. I cannot tell you how good a sport murder ball is. And Noir, I know we got into that on break on one of our shows once on the show with Frito.
It's ridiculous. And also, I did rowing one time, and my arms have never been more smoked.
Oh, yeah. I'll do it to you for the first few months. I got into sports because I wanted to try to build muscle and protect my shoulders as a wheeler. So I got into swimming, and then I was a try-hard.
Kayaking and like any rowing sport is so it's like your entire upper body is just built
and
for that.
So I don't row with my legs. So yes, it is all that. It's very intense. But Long Beach has a excellent Paralympic rowing training program. There are a lot of cool sports opportunities in the area. But I was trying to learn weights basically because because especially if you don't have a background in something like barbell, it's very like you need to learn from someone. And anything in competitive sports it taught me, you really do benefit from coaching. So I wanted to find a place that would work with me as a disabled athlete to figure out how to adapt movements where needed and things like that. And what I found was this gym for nerds called Nerd Strong. And I was like, well, these coaches might just like nerd on athletics. And lo and behold, they do. Some of my most wonderful friends through that place. But they were a lot of them in their day jobs, and like a lot of the members were members of the industry. And so they were connected to this little new media studio. When that studio did a charity stream, they brought on the Nerd Strong coaches and a handful of athletes to go and do an on-stream workout. I got my start in this space doing burpees.
That's awesome. I hate to do this. I want to backtrack for a second because you brought something up. You brought something up, and I love communities that I know nothing about. And you mentioned that you are chair twins.
Yes.
And so in my mind, I immediately just kind of imagine that like the PC building community. Do you guys like nerd about your chairs? Like, you got to get this piece, you got to get this piece, and
so I've discovered it from the side because Teal and I haven't directly interacted. She, after doing a bunch of film work in the space, moved to Georgia and is over, I think it's like moved out of town. So we had never met, but everyone I know at Geek and Sundry knew Teal from having like worked on the guild, the head of video, like directed the guild, things like there were all of these connections that because I came in later, like I'm not saying I'm like Control C, Control V, because obviously I am my own person, but like one rolled out, another rolled in, and it happens like you can tell on site if someone has the same build effectively. There are a handful of brands that will do custom ultralight wheelchairs, which is what people who use them every day want to do to try to spare our shoulders from pushing around that ugly hospital mess. Like that ain't it on an aesthetic level, and it ain't it on a functional, like I want to have connective tissue when I'm 40 kind of thing. So like there are a handful of brands and there are various permutations on a setup. Yes, much like PC building. So you could effectively trip and fall into having a near identical rig if you have some fairly similar requirements. We have the same frame, the same wheels, the same rims.
I'm sorry. I love the idea of that because like I don't know if you've been to the PC building threads, but they get like real competitive. Like, yo,
oh yeah,
is that really the graphics card you're using? Okay.
I mean, I'm definitely specifically a chair nerd because it's optimization. Like I'm optimizing in this case for like how distance per push, basically, because that's fewer total pushes, that's less repetitive stress. So she's lightweight, but she's rigid to transfer the momentum super effectively. Like
and you've named
my character sheet brain. It's configuration. You have to have like you will get a CAD of the chair to approve to make sure all of the dimensions are exactly correct. Because what fits me wouldn't fit Noir.
Yeah.
And like it would not work ergonomically. So like it's incredibly customized. The one I have is like made up in Washington State. The welds are but yeah, they're highly, highly custom, but there are a few options that are just like, if you get the opportunity to get them, you freaking do. And an airline destroyed my last wheelchair. And so we have Phoenix, who rose from the ashes of her fallen forebear, and she's beautiful and perfect.
Hell yeah. And the last thing I want to mention is the reason that I asked that if there's like a sub hobby is because one of my favorite things about like just close-knit communities is that like geek out on things that a lot of people don't pay attention to is whenever you're watching like TV or a movie and like somebody is describing like a PC and they use like you've got to have 2 terabytes of RAM and you got to have like an RX 9 billion something. It's just like, oh my God, who fucking wrote this?
I judge every wheelchair on television, and comic books have been getting so much, like the artists have been using so many more references, like absolute props to them that made great improvements because I have folders of images of, oh dear God, no, this is not what a wheelchair does.
Some of these artists
don't even have time.
Wheelchairs.
Like they're just, because like, wheelchairs are gonna break They're going to break in the middle of nowhere. Can you repair it? Or are you just now sitting on like a dead wreck? This like high-tech floaty boy might be impressive, but if you're stranded in the middle of a road trip, what you gonna do? Do you have plans for that? No, you didn't think of that as a designer. The over-engineered science fiction chair is specifically like, if you live an experience, you think about the details of it very differently. I think about like repair. I think about like, hey, can you get that into a car? Then how are you moving? Like, how are you going to the bank? All of these sort of like day-to-day things that science fiction chairs and leather chairs like don't think of. And that's maybe why you want to rely on references like now more comic book artists do. But Devil sure is in the details there.
I think you might have just fucked up Professor Xavier for me.
Yes! His stairs are terrible. How does a man with that much money have that terrible all of them, every single chair he has ever had? He's also the worst because he is a pick-me mutant.
It's true.
He's the worst. And in some ways, like the fact that he is in a mansion that he can only get around is only accessible to him because he has limited TK and he has TKs around him is so that like, imagine, and this is absolutely the X-Men issue I'd write, hire me, Marvel. Imagine a mutant in a wheelchair comes to Xavier's school, and it's just not accessible.
Holy shit!
Even though the headmaster...
Oh my god, the X-Mansion doesn't have any ramps!
Half of X-Mansion, like, I've taken so many exterior shots, about half of them do not. And interior, there's no evidence that there are lifts, except down to the basement. If you're on an upper level, and there's a fire, and you are just like a student at that school, you better hope Jean Grey comes and saves you, or like Colossus comes and carries your ass out. It's terrifying, and it's so sad, and it establishes, like, it says so much about Xavier, and who he is within the X-Men, like, and within his relationship to being mutant, surrounded by non-mutant, parallels the accessibility in his own house, which is, I can navigate this world the way I am, specifically as a non-visible mutant, as a wheelchair user with limited telekinesis. We can make this work. We don't need further accommodation. Pick me, mutant. And the mansion reflects it.
How have I been reading the comics this long and only just now realized, holy fuck, the X-Mansion doesn't have any ramps.
Magneto was always right. Magneto always has a point.
Yeah.
Charles Xavier is definitely like panders to like wants to be like the tolerant mutant.
It's even worse because I remember Genosha. Genosha had ramps.
Yup. And that's like, it's like the freaking, I lived in Berkeley for a year while I was studying integrated dance. It's the only time I didn't live in Los Angeles. And it's like a cryptopia because it is a historical seat of the disability rights movement. And like the difference in navigating the world is palpable. Like buildings that I just like, LA isn't terrible as these things go, but there are just lots of places that I know I'm going to have a problem and I'm just going to stare at someone until they feel extremely uncomfortable and crawl my chair up their stairs that they insist there's a historical exemption for, even though there very much is not. And if I had any time, I would sue them, but I need to live my life. So they continue to break the law. In Berkeley, like, shit just had ramps. And that's Genosha on like the accessibility level, and then thematically on the mutant level. It's a built environment where you can just exist.
Like, my mind has been blown. There isn't one piece of media with the X-Mansion.
A couple times I have some exterior shots that have ramps.
Really?
None of the movies do, because I went into it. I looked specifically for images of the X-Mansion. Half of them will have it, half of them will not. It's only on the outside. They all have stairs on the inside as far as I can tell.
Okay.
It's very uncomfortable.
And unless you want to get into the mansion basement, into Cerebro or the danger room, there's no elevator.
Yep. There's no elevator. Exactly. They only go down. They don't go. Like, if you are accommodated by being on the ground floor for all of your classes and for like your rooming, you can't go upstairs and visit and whisper to your friends. You can't do it. But like, it's weird. Like, for all that we've had like the X-Men as many different marginalized identities, I am very much looking forward to hire me, Marvel, the disability angle for the X-Men. But this is why I do what I do in this space, because we don't get those angles in media a lot. And so that's what telling, like, in particular, disabled stories does for me. Like, there's no one greenlighting what comes out of my mouth. They can't stop me.
Right. Man, I just, I have to say, like, just in terms of like marginalized identities, it's very, we all have our own different challenges, and one of the things that you were describing, like, just sitting around it just kind of glaring at somebody with stares, is that it's such a physical representation of how much somebody did not think of you. And like, that is just, it's like such a non-verbal but extremely loud fuck you, that it's just like
all the time,
fuck you, dude.
People look at it differently. Like, I've ruined a couple of my friends existing in public because once you see it, you can't unsee. How many of your friends' houses have 4 steps to get inside?
Oh my God.
My apartment building is not wheelchair accessible. It is all walk up.
Almost no one's is, unless they are very new, and so they have elevators, in which case they will cost more in rent. It's a good thing that the disabled poverty level isn't double that of the general population, because paying only for brand new condos that can afford elevators sure would be untenable.
Society is so fucked.
It really is not ideal. It's really not ideal. And yes, in a very transparent sort of way, like, there are social interactions that we get as marginalized people, especially visible ones. Like, you can see what's going on, and those do exist, and we see how people treat us. But also, wow, boy, when there are physical, institutional, you just know. And what do you do at that point? Like, they didn't build it, and they can't fix it at this moment. We have to just exist in this awkwardness together, and I have to precisely calibrate the amount that you do not become defensive and double down into it. I just want to make it enough that you wake up at 2 a.m. and then maybe file a report with someone. I don't want people to hurt, but I want to be able to get into buildings, and whatever level of discomfort I can get to that will maybe change something. And this is probably also why so many of the stories that I do in TTRPGs are about, like, the cultivation of empathy and, like, recognizing personhood in other people.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a lot that marginalized people are telling, because, like, see us. We're people. How do you make someone see your people?
I fucking agree with that completely, because it gets to a point where, like, in whatever way that you are marginalized, where I don't want to say that everybody hits this point, but I think, I can plainly remember a moment where it's just like, you know what, this is just how it is. Like, it is just like, I think one of the reasons that we like telling stories so much is because it is the closest way that you can wrap somebody in your experience. And it's just like, are you tired of this? Because there's look.
And stories are so good at it. And I think game stories in particular because games are about, like on a meta level, agency. In a scripted medium, you don't have any agency in what's going on in the story. Games, I mean, yes, there's lots of cutesy thing about choices, but the big thing about it, the big novelty of the medium is like players are expressing so much more scope of what they can do and what happens. And so by extension, it's a really powerful medium for talking about powerlessness, because the inability to act is even more frustrating in a game than it is in anything else. Like as frustrating as it is to like, you know, read and she's still my go-to, Dolores Umbridges of the world and feel the powerlessness in the face of mundane awful.
Yeah.
It's even sharper in a game where you have rules that say you should be able to do something and you can't. That like games are so good at articulating that is so much a part of those day-to-day experiences that like we try to communicate.
Games are a medium to help human beings express empathy.
Yeah.
I don't remember who I had this conversation with. I don't even remember if it was a conversation I was in or just something that I watched. But I remember seeing people talking about an Aarakocra society and like how Aarakocras, you know, they don't really need doors the way that we traditionally do. They can just kind of fly on the roof and have roof access. They don't really need ladders. They don't need a lot of that kind of stuff. And somebody that was playing a human that was going to be going to this place was like, well, how am I going to get to places? And
that sounds like a you problem.
It was just like, why would they think about...
Right. You're not a part of their built environment.
Right, yeah.
You're not a part of the default assumption.
And it was just like hearing, like having these conversations, it brings me back to that moment where it's just like, yeah, it kind of sucks when you're dealing with a society that doesn't factor you in to navigating it. It's literally like being in an Aarakocra society. Like,
it sure do be right, because I can't get up there any more than I can grow wings and fly. As a personal, like for me, there's a personal strat of like, okay, I'm jacked as hell. I can do this. I can haul my chair and I can haul that fine ass up the stairs. Do I? The calculus of it makes you feel that better because I did get in the door versus if you don't see, you just forget, like, you know, wheelchair users don't come here.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it is that they don't come here?
It's so common. But like ultimately a fair amount of the time I do opt for locking eyes. Step.
And
step.
That is, I think that's it perfectly. I think what you're describing is just, there is a reason why, like, the tabletop community is being taken over by such a diverse and brilliant array of different personalities, different souls, different lifestyles. And it's because people that have had society built for them, when the doors are open to everybody, they kind of get overwhelmed because you've never had to just kind of go, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. Like you never had
a democratized storytelling medium because the production barrier to entry, especially now with more remote streaming, is lower than ever. People can just tell stories, and there's still issues, especially on a platform with such rough discoverability, of like getting that platformed because money is platform and money is whiteness and all of that.
Yeah.
Like there are still a whole lot of structural and institutional things that are happening, but making those stories in ways that can get out to other people is so much more possible than if it has to get greenlit by a producer
who
walked up those stairs, so to speak.
Yeah, a production studio would never greenlight something that's by a queer, BIPOC, or a disabled person. Unless you're like a straight cis-het white man, the odds are stacked against you that you will ever get any sort of funding.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of happening everywhere, though. It's just like there's fantasy and sci-fi were genres that were overwhelmingly old white guys. In one of the best sci-fi books that I have read in a very long time, it's called The Three-Body Solution, and it is by an Asian author, and it's translated. And it is blowing my mind, And it's just like when you open up the door to other people, like at some point, the sixth gear that everybody who has had to struggle by not having the world handed to them, like problem is capitalism runs everything. And that sixth gear has been under development for centuries. Every fucking decade, every year that you don't accommodate other people and you make them work a little bit harder, you're just training them. And then we've gotten to the point where talent is so overwhelmingly undeniable that their capitalistic tendencies can't ignore it any longer.
There's just too much. You have no choice but to co-opt us.
That's exactly what, and it's just I don't love struggle, but I respect what it does. And it goes back to just circling back to time being skill points. Like I kind of love that.
Yeah, but it ends up applying to a lot.
But I cut you off way earlier because I was super fascinated about the chair building community. So you started your career doing burpees, which is the most baller way to start.
It's people ask, how do you get into this industry as a tabletop role-playing professional? And it worked for me 100% of the time. That's my recommendation. There. Get really good at push-ups. So I went in on this charity stream, and couple of the coaches there actually ended up pitching a show to the network that was a nerd workout segment on Project Alpha, a subscription platform launched by Geek and Sundry that had its own paywall content, including this workout show. So I came in as a guest and did more burpees. And while I was there, I talked to people in the kitchen. And so then they brought me back as a guest for a board game show with Becca and Ivan, Becca Scott and Ivan Van Norman. And this was at that, yes, this was at that time, a lot of what the talent scouting in that studio looked like. Someone came on as a random guest based on someone else who was already sort of in the circle. They vibe check the person. And that was very important. If you had a bad vibe, you were gone. And it's one of my favorite things about this corner of Nerd World is they extremely protected the vibe. And then they would just see how you did on a show and then see how you did on another show, give you a few guest spots, confirm the vibe. And so eventually they put me on a role-playing part 4 of a 4-part Star Wars segment that mostly involved behind camera crew and then a couple on-camera folks. And at this point in my life, I had been playing role-playing games for probably 4 months.
Okay.
I did not have a big background in role-playing games at all. I played a couple sessions of D&D, and I played a Masks campaign of all things with Jason Mills, game designer for Demigods, Powered by the Apocalypse, and regular DM on Happy Jacks. I have to plug him because all of my friends from that first game I ever played became streamers. Like every single one of the people in that game now streams, but people did it separately and on different channels. So I had like a couple months of experience when I got off of that one-off, and they didn't know that I played at all. They offered me the spot on Eric's TTRPG and told me that it was a diversity hire, but it was a diversity hire where I also passed the vibe check. And, you know, that's always a mixed feeling to get as a review, but it turns out that the check spends.
I was gonna say, acquire the bag. And
I think it isn't totally, like, you don't know what you're missing until you bring diverse voices in. And that if they're just like, if everybody's vibes are cool, see what stories you can tell, what angles you can have that you wouldn't ever have looked from. Mine, for instance, sits about 4'2". It's a very tall building. That was the thing about Cake and Sundry back in that day, because many people have gone on in the space, but they're very tall. Eric Campbell, with whom I play many of my games, is 6'3". Travis Willingham, who was in the kitchen the same evening as I was 6'5". Matt Key, 6'5". B. Dave Walter, 6'9".
This broken bar.
I'm a short lad.
Right. So like they can't get me and B Dave in the same frame unless they are shooting from downtown. That is 2 feet 7 inches of practical difference.
Oh my.
Fortunately, they had bar stool height chairs, so I would just like clamber up onto them so that I could like hug people properly and like be of a height. And so literally we could get actual promo photos.
My height's gonna be why I don't make it. No.
I mean, if I can be a short king and get this far, right? But it was a tall building.
You hold it down for all of us. I wanted to ask you a question because I have also had the blatant, hey, you're a diversity hire. I'm just keep it a buck with you. Yep. And it is a weird feeling. When I know that when I had that, I felt a lot of responsibility, like, okay, I've got to knock this out of the park so that more Black folks get it.
So
like, do you feel that same pressure?
I mean, in practical terms, I was very well trained for that way before I ever got to the studio, because in any environment I was in outside of like explicitly like disability dance and disability activism environments, you gotta realize I'm most people's first wheeler. I'm always that to most people. And they do not know what the etiquette is, but they know that it's very dangerous if they say something, but they don't know what the thing is that they shouldn't say. They are just really, really trying, and they don't know what landmine it is to trip on, and it's very scary. And so it is my job in these spaces, and it is the way I can move through the world to just very gently dom them so that they can have the script to feel comfortable. It's okay, don't worry.
You just emotionally dom them into...
You're not going to step on... I'm not going to let you fuck up. Just do what I say.
Okay, first off, I'm stealing that. Second off, I relate to that a bit, and just kind of on my side of the fence, and it's just like you gotta walk carefully because you'll like people like will slip into AAVE to like get comfortable, and it's just like you gotta be like, hey,
dial it back, please.
That isn't yours.
So it's just like I absolutely feel that tepidness that they walk around you with, because you're like, they treat you like you're a giant cancel bomb. Like if they mishandle the cancel bomb.
And especially because there are so like, if you aren't regularly interacting with say a wheeler, all you've got to go on is what you've seen in like TV and movies. And we started this off talking about just how completely off base that is, which means that people have no real script. And likewise, back in 2017, I was most like Geek and Sundry folks' first they themmer. Like, I was really anxious when I started on Twitch, because all I knew was that Twitch was a cesspool and Twitch chat was scary and hateful, because I like knew the gaming side of Twitch a little bit from like, I don't know, watching StarCraft. But I figured I could try to be safe, or like risk a lot of Twitch hate and actually use my own professional nouns. And it was a lot of learning for a lot of people. And my fate, like, one of the best things about my career was watching this space grow to where that I'm almost never someone's first non-binary person who uses they them pronoun. Like, that's from that always being a thing the same way that it is with the wheeler. Like, I'm still most people's first wheeler, but it's not the double anymore. And like, that growth feels amazing. And that like, there are a ton of stories like that now everywhere, that like, I started in this space, and like having those characters was like a relatively pioneering thing in this space, to it just being ubiquitous. It's like, at this point, I don't like watching the growth of it. Just, I can just sit back on my little Thanos porch overlooking my farm, and I have done enough. I have made half the universe gay.
Half, you don't give yourself enough credit.
Oh, thank you.
Should have called for the head. Oh, Thanos' porch needed a ramp. I'm sorry, I just noticed.
Shit. Oh my gosh, I need to go back and watch that scene now. I wasn't sure if it was like, because I remember it sort of being a little elevated. I wasn't sure if it's like, you know, the dirt sort of goes into the porch like a Skyrim clip of the terrain.
I think, and I'm not.
I think it might be.
I think it's a 4 steps.
Like, I call this the fuck you steps because it could have been accessible, but fuck you.
Buffy, but Sam gave the universe the double snap.
I don't know what I expected to talk about in this interview, but this is so much better.
Because somebody photoshopped the Infinity Gem system rainbow color. I need that.
Yes.
The gay stones.
Oh. Yes, please.
I forgot everything I was about to ask.
None of it matters. You got it.
Oh. Okay, when in doubt, go to the
queer
staple
affinity
questions.
stones. Yes, we'll go back to standard questions.
I love it.
That's it. We gotta cut it here.
Oh god.
We broke.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Look, again, this is all I hope that ever can, like.
I'm just imagining when Thor's like, no, and then it's like, yeah.
Yes.
I think there's a whole sketch here, honestly.
There really is.
I think there's a whole. I look forward to it.
Oh god. All right. So my stable questions.
Yeah.
There is a war in the TTRPG community that is happening. It's a silent war between technically 3 factions, but it's mainly 2, which is the side that thinks that dice are forbidden candy meant to be crunched versus those that say don't put dice in your mouth, don't crunch the die. Now, there is a small subsect of cowards who refuse to make a choice that say crunch responsibly.
Crunch responsible. Be crunch responsible.
Damn you so much. I'll never forgive Brandon for not making a choice, you coward. But we need to know, Sam, what side? Oh my God, I just thought Thanos.
There he is.
Thanos.
Yes. Let's go.
It just hit me.
Yes. Yes.
Damn it. Sam to Leve, Thanos.
What? Alert in chat. If you got it, you got it, my friends. Let's go.
What side of this unholy war are you a part of?
So I talked about being a TTRPG professional. This is my profession in the world. So what the hell kind of money you think I'm made of? I can throw away my dental.
Thank you.
If you want dice, because you said put dice in your mouth and crunch. You said them in separate sentences. So if someone wants to like marshmallow count how many freaking D20s they can put in their face without biting down, you know what? Live your best life. That looks kind of funny to me. Be the chipmunk you want to be in the world.
That's still a choking hazard.
You know what? I'm not going to yuck a yum noir. But ultimately,
I suppose I can't choose when I'm worried about choking hazards.
Exact. I also love that you spelt that choose CHEWS. Well done, you. I could hear it. I could hear the pronunciation. I'm sure it was deeply intended. So easy answer. I like my rules crunchy, not my dice.
There it is. There it is right there.
Your crunch is wrong.
I've gotta have you Photoshop purple with the graffiti stuff. Thanos.
Good. I'm glad I made a proper impact on this. I of all of the wars in TTRPG, I admit this wasn't because, like, gosh, we do love a discourse. But
we do love CD ponies, yes.
We my goodness gracious, cooldown ponies?
Just keeps going. They just keep going.
Look, we all have our various assumptions, and I told you before the show I play too much Overwatch. But no, I think I talked about it as a streaming category. Whoops, now it's on live. But God, where was of all of the wars, that one wasn't the one I expected.
Oh, which one were you expecting?
Oh, actually, I thought it was going to be crunch versus narrative. Because people will constantly create that false dichotomy non-optimized characters are axiomatically more fun or better story. The whole thing born of like the board game history and the people who are super into that side of it versus like the theater kids who take over and have our lingering insecurity about our own validity in the face of the like masculine coded tactical OSR bro side. And so perennially play out this completely unnecessary argument over which one is better, or like it's valid if you do both, or valid that you do this or valid that you do the other, as if like, yes.
One has more validity than the other.
And as if you can't just have both, or that optimization can't involve stats toward not damage per round, but toward a particular story arc. You can literally mechanically optimize to tell the story that you want to tell. It's what I do about half of the time. And yet it is constantly treated as, and clearly this is a failure of all of us in this interview, it is treated as a binary. We cannot let this pass. Because we do not.
Whenever this argument comes up, the crunchy versus narrative, I give the answer Stinky Cheese Man. And I will explain why Stinky Cheese Man.
I mean, if you feel you must, I think it's
Fairly Odd Tales.
If you can make a story about a Stinky Cheese Man, you can make a story about literally fucking anything, whether they're optimized or not. So that's a dumb question.
Right, exactly. The notion that the character needs to be a certain sort of way. I mean, personally, I treat character sheets as creative prompts because I like creation through constraints. The same way as like the people in the party who was like, okay, so what's everyone else doing? Because they want the constraint of being the fill for like, okay, well, I guess we need a tank. You've created, you elected for a creative constraint to build your character around.
Right.
I tend to see the whole sheet as that kind of prompt where I can look at like, okay, what kind of person has this strength score and dumped decks this hard and has an entertainer background? And like, you know, it's just a prompt to me. Yeah. And I like that ultimately I tend to get something that's like the mechanics are integrated to the story, because not all game sets will work the reverse engineered way. Sometimes you come with a concept. Like when I did Janelle Rue on Shield of Tomorrow, I came in with a concept because the rules weren't even officially out. We got the beta rules the day we did character creation. And so I came in with a concept, and gosh, the mechanics were rough to make that work. It was a very awkward translation because I didn't have the rules in front of me to like do the build first. So they were like kind of disintegrated, not like the 7th level spell, 8th level. I can never remember which level that one is. Finger of Death is 7th. I think disintegrate is 8th.
The fact that you have that on call tells me a lot about you. I'm a little afraid.
Very little high level caster. I played 20th level wizard. They're called for B-Dave because he loves the 20th levels. I think we were his first campaign that did that as like a pilot. Theogony of Kairos. I played a wizard because I was like, if you play 20th level, why would you not? He's a wizard. Like they're always like, oh, they're trash at low levels and they're great at high. It's like, okay, cool. This is just dessert. Let's go. So I built Tails. They had the urchin background, which is important because that gives you a pet mouse, and that makes it better than any other background in the PHB. There, I've said it. You get a pet mouse, urchin background. Write it down. The mouse name was Eds. It was the brains of the operation. And I just played a freaking like little like Matilda, like a Dickensian orphan Matilda who got wizard powers like 0 to 20, but just really loved books so gosh dang much. And that one had Disintegrate and Finger of Death. Yes.
Like, I mean, have you ever honestly like sat around and imagined what it must be like to live day to day as a 20th level character of any of these classes? It's so I would not trust myself with that kind of ability.
High level adventurers are Omega level supers.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yes. Exactly. And this is why, because of the parallels in X-Men, I don't know why I'm X-Men Day. The parallel, like we identify with the X-Men, but the terror non-mutants feel is the terror a peasant feels when 20th level adventurers come to town.
Ooh.
That's how they feel all the time, just existing in the world.
You know what? Now that you kind of mentioned it, like, imagine Storm existing. Could you trust that anything that naturally happened?
I mean, can you ever trust a thought in your brain skull again if Professor X has ever taken notice of you or potentially would be in a position to do so? That's the thing. From the Rawlsian veil of ignorance, there is justification, like, it's different. It's tangent. This is why the marginalization metaphor breaks. Unless and until we get actual superpowers to be a disproportionate and existential threat, more than our puns already are.
I mean, anytime Cyclops looks at you, it's basically somebody pointing a gun at you.
Yeah, and we don't like that. It's scary and dangerous, and I want that to not be a thing that's a thing anywhere.
Thank you, please.
Right. So yeah, X-Men are complicated and like I consider them very similar in power level, if not like, yeah. I think most high-level Dungeons and Dragons stories are superhero stories. Like functionally, structurally. And I think most supers are terrifying if you're not a super. I think they are they are scary.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, there's a lot of these, like, but what if Superman evil type of stories, and I'm first off, I'm sick of them because I love Superman, and two, it's just, I think the threat of Superman or somebody going that way, subtly written and filmed, is a lot more interesting than just, and then Superman lasers people for no reason. It's just like,
being good despite power is not a thing we see in our real world modeled. Modeling what good use of way too much power looks like would in fact be instructive, because in our world we have people with way too much power and people with inadequate agency, and gosh dang, we don't have to ask what if Superman were evil. We have to ask is it possible for Superman to be good? Because that's the lesson that we in our actual world have to learn. And speculative fiction, like fantasy, like sci-fi, like superhero, like horror, we cannot help but try to work through and see our world in reflection, because it's a characteristic of our experience that, like, the thing we need to learn right now is how do we make them have responsibility? How do we make them have Superman? Because none of them, not a single one, they are all just lining up to be as caricatures of Lex Luthor as it is possible to be, like jumping into their dick rockets and just the tipping space. But
get it in there. Sorry. Oh,
of course.
I mean, you know what? I'm kind of glad you mentioned that, because
Please.
it's changing the way that we see a lot of superheroes. It's much harder to digest a Batman or an Iron Man.
Why is Bruce Wayne not just funding social services? Are we not uncomfortable with him being a billionaire? Come on, let's bring the energy. Come on, let's go.
And the thing is, like, the comics are trying to write through that. Like, yes,
right, because they want to keep the core concept.
Yeah, he does social services, but it's just not enough. And also, he's still Batman, so it's just like, they're hitting the problem of how important is Batman to Bruce Wayne, where he doesn't use the funds that he needs to be Batman to increase the funds he does for these social programs.
And why they emphasize, like, the ableism in antagonists, because crime as a social function doesn't really play, because you could just throw money at yes, there's a fair amount of crime in Gotham because there is wealth hoarding in Gotham. But no, these criminals are different because they're really crazy.
They're mentally deranged.
And that makes it a more morally acceptable structure. I'm actually playing in a really I wish more people knew about Power Play right now. It's the show that I do on Sundays on Q Times with Rick Budd, B. Zelda, Omar Najam, and Caitlin Bruder. And it is so beautiful and thoughtful and an absolute joy to play. I'm playing an alien invader that is a meditation on the evils of colonialism and imperialism. And like, the whole cast is absolute fire. It's in playing superheroes, though, it's not the first time I've ever run into the issue of, like, okay, what do you do with your supervillains at the end?
Frank Castle them.
Right, like if you want to not be just excessively violent, and I don't know, but like there are certain forces that I don't fuck with in my games.
Pokeball.
Trying to be an ethical superhero is genuinely difficult. And actually, like, yeah, in Callisto 6, we basically Pokeball in that, like, we cryo freeze at least one baddie. Because, like,
Jeez.
what else? Like, superhero stories are set up so that you are not a team of social services yourself. Like, you can't punch poverty.
I can't punch income inequality.
Right.
God damn it, I wish I could, though.
No, I disagree there. The fact that it is so concentrated, that just makes it an achievable list. We've talked about that backstage, about like the percent of wealth that's in the hands of like 8 people. That's a trilogy. That's you could absolutely punch income inequality. But
absolutely.
Sure, Reef. It's about ethics and superhero journalism.
It's genuinely like conceiving of an entire justice system outside of the terribly corrupt ones that we've built while being superheroes is often beyond the scope and yet is an integral part of superhero stories. What do you do with the villains?
Okay, so my I think the bad guy that comes to everybody's mind when this question is asked is the Joker, which Batman catches the Joker.
He's a catch and release program.
Gets out, kills more people.
Right.
This goes around forever.
Yeah.
I shoot him in the head. Like, I'm not a good person. I'm not a good person. Like, but I mean, I think this is inherently something that is more juggled with in the DC universe, because I don't know if you guys noticed, but Marvel superheroes don't really play that game.
I mean, Marvel has one of the best pages of a comic for this particular issue, which is a Spider-Man. I just want to turn people into dinosaurs. Like, some people just want to turn people into dinosaurs, and that's like
that kind of
ultimately
you could cure
the
cancer.
level of fictionalization. Right, but you want to turn them into dinosaurs. Like, you end up with people who are cartoonishly irredeemable, which I think is important to hitting the beats that are satisfying in superhero stories. And like, it's a balance that comes up, and that comes up particularly when you are like in an improvised story medium. Like, it shows up in Masks, or we play icons on Power Play. When I play closest, like, gosh, being superheroes. But by extension, also upper level Dungeons and Dragons now. Like, we have all of these very important discussions moving away from alignment and intrinsic evil that I think are so good and important to have. And I'm so glad, because like, fuck, can we please just attribute personhood a little more broadly? Because so much of what goes wrong is an inadequacy of empathy, an incomplete attribution of personhood. It's what motivates so much of the work and like the empathy-based storytelling that we were talking about earlier. And so moving away from the monstrous humanoids that Dungeons and Dragons did is important, not only on a let go of the freaking racism, let go of that level, but more
pretty please.
Like, the morality was so fundamentally flawed in a way that desperately needed investigation, and avoided it in part because ethical combat is tough, but combat is fun. And this is the tension that role-playing games seem to have put upon ourselves. Making a truly good game that like fit like good like capital G is hard, because goodness is hard.
You know, there's nothing that's more of a bummer than looking at the spell list and actually thinking of the real world consequences of it.
How many of these D&D spells are war crimes?
Or having somebody open your eyes to what the implications and consequences of these spells were. I had a 3-hour-long conversation about Charm Person, and I never want to touch that spell again. Like, it's just...
I play an Invisible Sun, which is extremely aware, like, will give you the powers, but also just appropriately call that enslaving another mind. Like, they will just tell you what it is. They are not papering it over with charm. And if you want to play the garbage, the spell is there for you. But you have to acknowledge what you're doing. It's not okay, because there should be space to explore, like, so many of us have, like, coming back from doing a bad is a universal experience.
Yeah.
No one is without fuck up. And they are on different magnitudes, but figuring out how to exist in the world after fuck up, and meditating on the nature of people who do bad things is, I think, an important and cathartic exercise for a lot of us. And so having options to those stories is important. I don't want to, like, puritanically constrain that we can only have good people doing good things all the time, because I think that fails to model experiences that we need as people to explore. And so having options to the war crime spells, I think, opens space for a lot of important stories, but I think it's important to be for games to frame themselves in a more morally self-aware way than I think Dungeons and Dragons ever aspired to do, or that a lot of games aspire to do. And that's not like a particular, I'm not hating on the Lizard game, y'all. I love the Lizard game. The Lizard game is a delight, and it is a mutually, I like a popcorn movie. I like River Tam beats up everyone. This is not on that, but, like, you know, if you're trying to tell those kind of, like, bigger picture stories, which I think a lot of creatives in this space are interested in doing, particularly given the influx of marginalized creators to a democratized storytelling medium. There are some platforms that, like, some games by design are better platforms for those kind of explorations than others, because they acknowledge when their spells are war crimes.
Yeah, I and one of the things that I try to do with the Lizard game in particular is, like, with spells like Charm Person, I'm very upfront with my players. Like, there is a red line that the spell can go to that does not exist in this world. That we just not gonna do that. So and again, I think that comes to the most important part of any table, which is communication. You're not gonna get very far in collaborative storytelling if you're not communicating.
Which is listening. Which is what we talked about at the very beginning.
And as we always say on the show, empathy or fuck off.
Yes, that one, please. And it's about bringing an energy of being as interested in what someone else is saying as the thing that you're holding that you're going to say next in your head, which I think is very tempting for a lot of role players of, like, I have this cool action I want to do. I just have to wait until they finish whatever it is they're doing, and then I can do this cool thing. And then everyone will think I'm cool, and not really catching or playing off of the cool thing that's currently happening while you're trying to hold the thing in your head so you don't forget the cool thing you're about to do. That also, it's better and more cohesive storytelling if you, like, play off of them. It's just how that, it's just works. That just pro tip story.
Your mind
listening makes it better.
Your mind can only play one movie at a time, and if it's not the one that's happening at the table, it's yours, and then you don't see what's happening at the table.
And if you don't see what's happening at the table, like there are a lot of, you do not have to be neurotypically aware of vibe to use to like find a mode of communication with your table that will work so that everyone has fun together. Like, I know at a lot of the tables I do, a lot is done non-verbally, subtextually, done in like kind of a guest culture sort of way. But there are so many tools, there are so many different strategies, there are so many things you can do to make sure that everyone at your table is comfortable. But if you're not paying attention, then you're going to miss that every time. Mm-hmm. And I think just setting yourself up as fundamentally a listener and a reflector and a foil primes you also to be a better, safer, kinder, more aware player. You want to look at why Abria Iyengar is so good? Fundamentally a listener, a very, 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 very sharp listener. And so anywhere she positions an NPC, anywhere she positions her own PC, it elevates whatever is going on, because she's never holding an idea in her head. She's always in the moment of what is going on and thinking through the chess of what that person is trying to do, trying to accomplish narratively through this action. If like my bard is stumbling up and trying to talk to someone, but they're really just not very good at talking to people, there's like the comforting foil who comes in to save them and then successes the social check. Or there's the one who supports the fact that this player wants to fail right now. And how can my character help them fail bigger so they use this as an inflection point toward growth? And that, like, figuring out what a player wants to do. One is one of the reasons Abria Iyengar. I'm sorry, I'm contractually obligated to make any interview an Abria Iyengar stand stream.
I'm Abria.
Yeah, we simp Abria here.
Epoch of Abria. We're geological here.
I just want to mention this point, and then we're going to go and have ourselves a nice, tasty 10-minute breaker, because I need to be human. I think that one of the most important parts of listening for a GM is not just the fact that that is how you end up telling amazing stories, but it's also how you protect your players. A GM is a uniquely powerful position in the sense that people are letting you create a world for them. You're putting them in a world. They're trusting you to be the bad guy. They're trusting you to be the good guy, everything. And if you are so into your own narrative, if you are so busy watching your own movie that you don't see that the people around you are giving you every nonverbal cue that I'm not okay with what's happening right now, that leads to some very, very bad things. So
at the far scale, you get safety issues. On even just the softest, smallest end, it's very natural for someone who comes in with plans, and the GM often does, or at least having ideas, because they are kind of, if everything else goes dull, the GM has to things along. So it's easy for those to create expectations. And it's human for expectations gone clay to be frustrating. What makes GMs so transcendent, so generous, the most generous position at the table, is that they are constantly, simultaneously in charge of coming up with expectations to deliver them to the table if needed, and expected to continuously and constantly throw those away because they want to embrace the player's idea. They are the person who is there to be thwarted. And that is not emotionally easy on a person, because we talk about bleed all the time with players, but the GM is up there just constantly getting their ass thwarted. And that takes so much love and so much appreciation. You can tell that I never GM because I'm not I could never, it just doesn't take it, but like I have so much admiration because it's such a generous position at the table, and the constant making of plans and setting up of expectations can make it very easy to want to go with them and not hear the soft pitch of a player idea. But every great GM that I see, that I work with, is enthusiastic about it, and it always makes me as a player want to do my best work. Because if my idea might actually get taken up, then I get the teacher's pet reaction. I get to make my teacher proud of the idea I had. And for those GMs, I will give them the moon. There is nothing I will not do.
The gifted kid burnout always has deep in their soul.
Never goes away.
Never.
We're going to cut to break and take a quick 10 minutes so that we can go and refresh our drinks, do bios, human things. You all should do the same. We will be back in about 10 minutes with more of this amazing conversation.
And the dark roast. Like, the reason that I was reading this article is because I did stand up like 3 or 4 years ago.
Show off. With your standing up.
We're just having a really good conversation, and we're just going to keep it going from here. So, hi, everybody. We're back.
Yeah, y'all will catch up. You're smart. But I'm still in the habit of writing jokes. And so, like, I read this article about this, like, lizard or something being able to reproduce asexually. And so I'm just like, there's a go fuck yourself joke here somewhere. And I spent 2.5 hours just trying to write, okay, how do I get to the punchline, go fuck yourself?
There is the meme of fine, I'll do it myself that does immediately come to mind whenever I think of parthenogenesis. That is like the non-scientific definition of parthenogenesis. Fine, I'll do it myself.
From the words of Thanos themselves.
Which isn't to say that all parthenogenesis is all on your own. There is hybridogenesis, a special type where a member of a species will mate with a related species and use the paternal DNA structure and discard all the content.
Yo, it was the Komodo dragon. Thank you, Fluffy Butt.
Yep, they are large and will occasionally commit a parthenogenesis.
Yeah.
Let's see, it's called facultative parthenogenesis because it's a different mechanism because these creatures sometimes reproduce sexually. Some species only reproduce parthenogenically, and that's called obligate parthenogenesis. Like an obligate carnivore has to eat meat. There are some aphids that are like that. Those are also cloning species.
Do you know how fucked our society would be?
It can only work on games. It can only work on things that are not useful. That was the deal. I could have done a lot of other things, but the brain didn't want it. And I think that is probably best.
And you know, you're just getting into just weird science stuff that we read. Like, I was reading, and post-nut clarity is a thing. Like, it's a scientific thing. And, like, I was thinking about No Nut November, and I'm like, these motherfuckers are gonna reach enlightenment.
Come December?
Right, December 1st.
Come December 1st, we're just gonna see people love it.
Sorry, did you just say come December 1st?
Yep.
See, this was the play. Everyone thought I was going to bring the the puns. It's no, I'm going to point out to Noir that they already committed one.
This is what I keep telling people. You make me an unwilling accomplice.
An unwilling accomplice.
I can't with you two. One at a time. But together.
It was one of the reasons I was so excited about this interview.
This is like the main
unholy
reason, because I know.
The unholy union, and it must be stopped.
But yeah, I do science segments every week for my personal streams because that was the main thing that changed for me when I became a more remote stream. When everyone became remote streamers, I got my individual streaming up because I was like, I had been talking big game for years and then not actually streaming. But way back on Star Trek Adventures, I did like the after show. I was the host, like, you know, the Talks Machina equivalent, but for our show. Because again, Geek and Sundry, we're trying to have a little B team. And for that, the producers kind of let me pick out my segments. And like the one thing I did was I want to have a science inside of my RPG, like talk back show. And so at the top of every after show, I would do a space science that had been published in the last month. And so now that I do personal streams every Tuesday morning, I have a segment called May Contain Science, which is how I knew about the Condors.
So there's a question about your Star Trek game that I wanted to ask, and I just remembered it. You're canon.
I am not canon.
The ship.
Other members of our party are beta canon. Eliza Pearl is beta canon.
Doesn't that kind of make you canon though?
Like, so there's like
I would stretch that. Like,
I mean, if there were reference, I am definitely like, when the guard is not looking, I am touching the cannon.
The Sally ride was in Discovery.
Yes. Well, so the ride was, but it was a different class of ship in a different era.
Yeah, different era.
We are thinking that means that, you know, we could be the ride B or C, technically. We don't know. But
Schrodinger's canon.
There are enough of like our people embedded, like Star Trek Year 5, the comic series, is alpha canon and written like that room is run by people who have been on that show as players. So we never know who knows stuff, but like we're also blessed that like, yo, Bonnie Gordon is actually just straight up alpha canon, the voice of the ship's computer on Star Trek Prodigy. Like, forget I am the least important in terms of canon Trek. Let me tell you about Bonnie Gordon, whose Kickstarter is live right now, by the way. So please go check that out. She thought it wouldn't hit a goal, and that's very adorable. It is currently double, and there are stretch goals have like, it was so cute. She was nervous, and I was just very rudely laughing at her. Like in a manner that was frankly mildly antisocial and perhaps cruel. But I was just so very amused by the notion that people would not so adore Bonnie Gordon that it would not fill within the first hour, despite not even being technically announced, just soft launched. But this is why we actually have to crush it as hard as possible. Just absolutely destroy it for the hubris of ever thinking that not enough people loved her and that Kickstarter would not be obliterated.
I just threw the link to the Kickstarter in chat.
Thank you.
For the library bards.
Yep, I was trying to do that, but I copied and pasted the wrong thing because I don't have my coffee.
Everybody,
you mind deleting that for me?
Yeah, sure, I got that for you. There you go.
Thank you much.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
I don't function without coffee. Well, who would have thought?
I mean, I got into this work because like I was new to gaming, but I really loved it. And if you do this in the professional space, people who are very good at telling stories and at being players will be in a regularly scheduled game with you. Like just purely as someone who loves tabletop role-playing games, the way to get the best games possible was to become a professional. Like that is the end here. And so like Bonnie Gordon, alpha canon, ship's computer, go watch Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah, I've only watched a few episodes because like there's so many streaming services.
There are so many streaming services, and like my particular pandemic era depression was like not catching up on like watching anything, which given that I'm a cultural void, just, wow, it's getting worse.
Like, yeah, I've got my Disney Plus, I've got my Netflix, I got my Hulu.
Yeah. Basically, they just reinvented cable TV, but got rid of ESPN.
I mean, I guess you can have that if you want.
I mean, I have
sometimes there's Murder Ball on there. Very rarely. It should absolutely, it is far too entertaining not to be on ESPN. That is the hill that I won't die on. I have wheels. I'm gonna ride down the hill. I'm gonna say wee like a roller coaster.
Yo, I gotta tell you, in between breaks in one game, Sam dropped a bunch of links to these wheelchair athletes just doing the most wild shit I've ever seen.
It's called WCMX. You can look up Aaron Fotheringham. You will find a bunch of high quality YouTube. I based a Tempting Fate. I based a Spider-Man character off of him. Just like, because all of the things you could do and then add webs.
Hell yeah.
Jesus.
Think about how you just like skate off the side of buildings on wheels. Just Aaron Fotheringham is the coolest. Like WCMX is the coolest. Wheels are frankly the coolest. And I need more Zoom-based characters. I have maybe, I don't know, 1/3 to half of my characters are physically disabled such that they use assistive devices. And I think most of them are wheelers. Janelle Rue was an exception, but I've wanted to hit people with crutches for so long.
Janelle Rue was a badass character.
They were very archetypal.
I love
but
them
then
so much.
I have to tell you, with the combat wheelchair just revolution happening, I've been playing a lot more games with disabled characters, and then after the videos that you sent me of like Murder Ball and all these other sports, it made me come face to face with, like, a lot of times our general perception of the disabled is that, like, you know, treat them with kid gloves, like to be like to
the anxiety,
to treat them like they're fragile.
Yeah, we touched on that for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But then you show me these motherfuckers going 10,000% ham.
Of course.
Like, not a little bit. And like I'm playing with my friend Sam, another Sam.
We are very popular. I like to think that it is like seriously, we had Space Sam and Magic Sam back at Geek and Sundry because I was always in space shows and he was in Crit Roll. And so that was how they told us apart, to the point that, like, I was in a completely unrelated context and someone called me Space Sam.
Okay, I'll call him Sam Wise. There we go. Because
that's
the
Yep.
And,
Oleander's player. Yep.
Yeah. Oleander. That's the game. I play with Oleander. I'm Sean.
Cool.
Yeah.
I see their promo tweets, but I don't. I guess maybe I'm not following the network. I have to double check later.
It's all good. But I play with Oleander, and like Oleander is the necromancer and just obliterates shit. And you know, it got to the point where I do a lot of growing through my characters. I don't make any. I don't do any kind of. I don't try and hide that fact. There are a lot
vulnerable and beautiful and trusting. And I've talked in other interviews before about how like proud I am to like see someone do that. It's so rare in this space, and it just speaks so well of you.
It's. I don't know why it's easier for me to confront the bullshit that Noir does by having a character just embrace that thing that I do that I don't want to face. And there was a moment in the game that we recently had with Oleander and Shaw. Shaw's this big dragon-born like fighter who recently transformed into a dragon because magic shenanigans, and now they're back in their body. And they were having it out with Oleander because he died and they brought him back and it was a whole thing. And it was one of those moments where the emotions are high and characters start to speak a truth, and the character starts to speak a truth that even the player doesn't realize that they're feeling. And he says to Oleander, like, I was able to fly not more than like 2 weeks ago, and now I can't. I'm stuck in this useless body. And there was just a moment of connection where, like, they're having it out, and I'm very excited for it. But I didn't realize that that's where some of this happened. And there's such a strength for Oleander going like, like, really? Let's talk about it. You
hacking things. Yeah. It's why I am really excited to see disabled role players in the space, like neurodivergent role players in the space. Like, there are so many things that, like, there's so much that I think, because disabled people are really segregated out of society by a lot of design, down to the 4 fuck you steps into a house, that have just ended up so far outside conversation. And playing at tables gives you opportunities to, like, explore sides of yourself that you didn't know you had in you. Like, things that you hadn't thought about. Every argument for diversity ever. It's real valuable, and it's real rewarding work to do, because so little of it has been platformed. It's bad in the media. It's bad.
Yeah, I like getting to the real strength and not the Hallmark strength of people. Which, you know, Hallmark is just like, you know, hey, you've gone through shit, you're strong, okay. I feel like there's an honesty of when a friend crosses the line and you have to check them. Yeah. Like, that checking them, that's the real strength, and that's the really bringing them to the reality of, like, yo, you need to grow. And, like, I love you enough to slap you until you do.
It's such a lovely dynamic to model, and to have the awareness that it is an act of love and trust, because you know the other party will also see it that way as a product of their own experiences. That, like, I'm only telling you this because I think there's a possibility you might do something with it. And so I am trusting you not to become a defensive jerk, not to double down as a result of that defensiveness and denial and insecurity, but that I not only think you do that, but there's a possibility you might be better, you might grow. I'm trusting you.
Like, it's such a beautiful argue in bad faith.
Exactly. It's such an act of love, and one that works best, like, one that we are inclined most to trust with other people who have to give such expressions of trust. But we were talking about, like, how to do the fuck up a little earlier, and it's just the softest expression, and one I'm very happy to see modeled in our stories, because usually it's like weird making up, like, that ends up, like, sweeping aside someone's consideration, or, like, something that gets resolved in a different and altogether cleaner way. And don't we love when systemic issues can be resolved in a single B plot?
Oh, we solved racism in 30 minutes on Family Matters. Woo!
And on that sort of topic, pivoting from that, where we talk about people who do things in good faith and act even in bad faith, but want to learn and grow from it, let's talk about bad actors that don't want to learn from that and grow from that. See that? I did a segue. That was a segue.
I did. Yes, it only has 2
pivoted.
wheels, but it's already better than the leggy thing.
Into. It's time for the That Guy segment.
That guy! Actually.
Segue into okay, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the That Guy segment. If you are unfamiliar with what it is, shut up, because I'm about to tell you. See, this is what happens when I don't segue. Shit. Okay, no, I got this. If you've been in the TTRPG community for long enough, you've probably had the displeasure of playing with a bad guy. That is someone who is a black hole of fun at the table. Someone who, if they were yeeted into the a black hole, your experience at the table would increase by tenfold. What has happened? So, Sam.
You got this. Take a deep breath.
TheNoirEnigma. That's your nickname for me now. I'm sorry. You're not getting away from it.
It was inevitable.
Do you have a bad guy story?
Well, so I told you I got into streaming TTRPGs fairly early in my whole game playing history, and further that everyone from that pre-stream time now streams. At least 95% of all of the games I have ever played have been streamed. It is possible it is a larger number. All of that is to say, one, to the extent that I would have played with that guy, that would be publicly available evidence. That someone could see out of their own text, and also would be spotting someone in ways that, if I wanted to do, would already be available on my Twitter. If I were committing to speaking truths out loud, we would be using our whole chest. That said,
I was just like, shit, I didn't think about somebody whose all their games are online. Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, it means that I have had far fewer of those experiences than many, because of the very heavy vibe checking in a lot of these communities. One of the great things about working with a corporate sugar daddy at a studio, or otherwise having some sort of institution to play within, is that there are other people who will be the bad guy for you. I have had experiences in studios where someone who would come in as like one of those day guests, the way I was doing burpees, like cornered me and made me feel uncomfortable. And they were, after that day, literally never seen again in that studio. Just absolutely nothing. Instant
Some say they never left the studio.
You know, the social media is awful quiet from that account lately. I mean, but just for all that people might talk about the disadvantages of sort of corporate structures in general and the CYA, there has been something incredibly valuable, and I've been safer as a player for being in production games. Like, that specifically creates safety, because like having a producer is having a person who will usually be a bad guy for you.
It's more of a curated experience for sure.
It is, and it's, there are a lot of things that contribute. It doesn't mean that that stuff can't happen. It just means that it's a little less, you're asking me to be mean to my friend than would happen in a normal social home game scenario. So usually it goes bad if the house is bad. There was a time when it was still fairly novel to talk about pronouns in a Twitch chat where mods didn't necessarily have easily available scripts and tools. Fortunately, I had been around for a while, and so there were like nice copy-paste scripts that were used as commands in chat for if someone came in with an innocent mistake. It would be so hateful if someone got mad about that. That would be so unacceptable, wouldn't it?
Sure would.
Yeah.
It would be so terrible if they had called an all-staff meeting of every player at every table on their whole channel for a variety of factors. But it would really suck if they made attack helicopter jokes in that meeting in reference to such a mod issue.
Can I just why is it hateful people's ability to write jokes stops at mediocre? Sorry,
because why make more effort than they have to?
They have been writing that attack helicopter joke to the ground.
And never riding the attack helicopter. No, this one was purely structural. It was, in fact, stormtroopers. If they want to identify as stormtroopers was, I believe, the last thing. But this story has a happy ending.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Because it doesn't really have one. Shortly after that meeting, the co-owner of the channel decided she didn't want to put up with dead weight, said, hey, you can have this channel, and left. Everyone in the cast left with her, all of the casts, because no one wanted to work with that guy. It struggled along for maybe one more campaign that 3 people watched. And now that he was no longer under her protection, no one in the industry wanted to fuck with him. Not even anyone who worked with anyone would fuck with him. And so he disappeared completely and has never been seen or heard from again in what might be, in fact, the only effective cancellation that has ever been committed. It is perfect. It is quiet here. The world is better, and no names ever need be named because everything worked out the way it's supposed to. And I'm not saying that that was the totality, because there is obviously like 20 different sides of being that guy. This was just the one that I got in sort of a very streamerly way. Being mad about chat commands is the weirdest and pettiest and most uniquely Twitch TTRPG thing to ever happen as that guy. But I mostly have good tables. My table mates are lovely. You go look at the people I play with. They're wonderful. That guys, when they happen, are in a different part of the chain, and gosh, sometimes the mediocre man gets yoked and the sun says, good. And no one misses him.
And they all lived happily ever after.
It really
is my favorite fucking fairy tale. Oh my god, I fucking love it.
Sometimes the mediocre man gets yoked.
Oh my god, that's
yoked.
Fucking Twitch commands? Okay, I'm sorry. Why?
Because this was the same text as another channel, and they knew that like they were BT. But yeah, no. Also, there was a lot of petty transphobia. There were a lot of other things involved there, including saying that they wanted to alter their gender marker so that they wouldn't have privileged position and just be taken for being a cishet white guy. They would get to be on all the diverses. So yeah, that came from a place and never heard from again. That's the best part of the story. It's drop.
I love it.
Just absolute drop. So like, yo, I have happy stories of the system working the way that it should.
You know, there is one portion of that story that I have encountered a few times, which are mediocre guys that hang around with exceptional women and leech on to their work without the I'm trying to put this in words, so just bear with me.
They're so strong they can carry him. Yep.
Mediocre guys leeching on to extraordinary women without the self-awareness to realize. Thank you, Fluffy Butt. Fluffy Butt, but you and me, buddy.
Buff is the best.
Fluffy Butt.
Without the self-awareness to realize that it's not their legs that they're standing on, but the legs of this extraordinary woman, and that it's really only by the grace of this person that they're leeching on that their presence is tolerated or that any doors open.
I would hope that if I were a total freeloader like that, I would be very conscious and like, I don't know, send flowers or something constantly. I don't know, just like at least know why I am where I am. And yet that is not the characteristic. I agree. Generally speaking, that is not how it ended up do.
So used to being carried, they no longer notice the lifters.
I mean, and let's what is privilege but that? Like just never to notice who's lifting you. And so yes, we see the way that all of it,
It's just all they have to do, really, is shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
That's really all it takes. And I have seen, I've encountered this, I'm gonna say 4 times for sure, where it's just like, oh, you're only here because you're being pretty vocal. Like, you're not only here because her. Like, do you not realize that everybody that got to this table, do you not realize that everybody that's being paid to play this game earned it, but you?
Just be arm candy. That's all you have to do. And the truth is that would be destructive to, like, the truth is it's not great for either the parasite nor the host. It is destructive to one's confidence in oneself to know deep down that one has not earned one's own success. And that toxicity expresses itself in any number of ways, because that is a very painful experience to have. It is better to go and strike out and pass or fail on your own muster, because then you can feel that you are where you are. And so not having that means a layer of denial is necessary purely to cope with your own position, which is not, it's not good for you, like for the freeloader. Like, unlatch its worth.
I have, back in my music days, my best friend is an amazing musician and was in several bands. And I know for a fact that a lot of the shows that I got to open at, a lot of my bigger shows, is because of my vicinity to my best friend. And like, having somebody open a door for you, or being someone that's being introduced, that inherently is not bad. What's bad is when you don't read the situation, you don't honor the position. Like, okay, I'm the new guy, I'm being introduced because this person's introducing me. So, you know, I'm going to be gracious, I'm going to be humble, I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to try and earn your trust as though I'm not starting from a higher position.
Right. And I mean, look, that's everything I'm describing about how I got into this space. You'll note how many times it was someone taking a chance on me through an introduction from another person. That is, I mean, we operate on a principle of social networks. Right. With all of the attendant ups and downs of that. And I would not be where I am in my career if I didn't have a bunch of white cishet male dudes in offices who shoved me in front of people and advocated on my behalf. Like, the amount of power that can be used as an ally in exactly that way can do so much for people, for good or ill, that like being able to get someone in a door is incredibly valuable. And like, yo, the best I've ever felt was ever being important enough to try to like, come on, quick, while they're not looking.
We'll sneak you in, let's go.
Come on. Of course you're supposed to be here. Shut the fuck up, get inside.
I can't tell you how many people I've had to yeet into success. Like, you don't.
But it's the best feeling in the world, isn't it?
It's so great. It's just
As
like,
someone who has been like drugged by the scruff of my neck into games with Noir.
Yeah. But it's a wonderful thing that people do for each other. And yes, if you are being scruff drugged, one tries to be one's best self and to establish oneself in that position by merit. Because like, look, if you are being arm candy freeloaded by a more successful woman, and yes, we've seen a bunch of this, and yes, this may have at that point gotten a whole lot more identifiable as to who that guy is, or it may not, which might be even
I still
worse.
have no idea who the hell you're talking
We'll
about.
talk later. He's delicious. But like, the thing is, if someone really does establish themselves, then no one thinks of them that way anymore. They just become their own person in the space.
Absolutely. I always try and stress this on this show. It's half of it is talent, half of it is drive, and the other half is fucking reputation. Don't be a dick. Even if somebody's being a dick to you, walk away.
Be available, be good, be easy to work with, have at least two and you will get hired. I think B-Dave was talking about it recently, but like, it's the maxim of pretty much any industry, but certainly very applicable in things like on-camera talent. Be available and, you know, be there when you say you are. Be easy to work with and be good. If you only have two of them, that's still a pick too. You might notice you don't have to be good. You can get pretty far being available and easy to work with. Like, if you know your system or able to like not know it effectively, if you have your characters ready with like some usable material for your GM, if you rapidly respond to emails and give availability in a timely manner, and you have availability, you don't have to be good. You can get a long way.
You can get a long way on consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one I'm working on. So there are a few questions that I want to make sure that we get in before we have to bounce. First off, you can have any 5 people at your table as long as they're alive right now.
Oh no.
Who are you picking?
Oh no. Again, you can't do this to me.
Yeah, I can't watch. I just did it. But here are some examples of people that have been selected. Lil Nas X, Michelle Obama. Somebody had the world's gayest table and it was amazing.
We had Dolly Parton and Elvira at the table.
Oh yeah.
Look, so
welcome in, Raiderson Sensei Suplex. Good to see you.
Hello. Part of the issue is I'm a cultural vacuum. So are we setting me up? Like, ultimately, I think I would want to have the best tabletop experience possible. This isn't have a dinner party.
Right.
This is a tabletop game, which means I want the people with whom I will have the most fun as that kind of experience, which actually means it probably becomes who in tabletop, with maybe a side of some other creatives. Like, for instance, not very much a streaming RPG person, but like Kieran Gillen, who writes and designs Die, is just like I got to play a beta test of like the one-shot version of that RPG at Comic-Con with like a bunch of comic creators and Peggy. But I got myself Peggy'd in and as a role player, and like it was one of those like, I only get this experience once. And also, you definitely cheated at character creation. You can't do this many things. That's cheat. No, we see you. So, like, you know, there are creatives who I think also will contribute to very strong table environments. But you also have to want them to be good people, not just interesting people, but also good people. Because we were talking earlier that, like, after enough hours, you can't hide who you are as a person at a table. And if I want this to be a good table, then I'm going to want the most generous, the kindest, not just like big personalities. That's why I think someone like Dolly Parton is such a great pull, because like good person is good tabletop role-playing experience. For me, they are inextricable. It's why I love getting to know people through games, because sure, I don't learn their specific interests if I'm only at tables with them. Like, I don't know most of your hobbies, Noir, even though we've spent like well over a dozen hours together. We've barely even
here we go.
Right, exactly. But I don't even know because we've interacted as characters, but I know so much about you as a person. Like, I mean, we've only we've gamed once?
Once, yes.
Once. And so like, can I get any kind of picture of you as the totality of a person? It probably wasn't the maximally efficient use of like 3 hours for it. But that's a one-on-one. Like in a group of people, you get the vibe of someone at a table based on just whether they're like, if someone is that guy, they're not just that guy at the table.
Yeah, given long enough, they'll show themselves.
They'll show who they are, for good or for ill. And so I'm at tables with people recurrently because I think they are good people. And I become friends with people through table because I think over time, they've showed me who they are. And I like it. So like, it would be a lot of picking friends and picking people who I think might be very nice and creative, but I don't know yet. Like my favorite Birdman, I think sounds like fun at a table, but I don't know yet. I haven't rolled. But like that would be to avoid incriminating myself, because I really would just choose people who are professional at the thing I want to have an experience of, because I also know the people who are professional are very lovely people because you can't fake it. It's not like scripted media. It shows way more. And so if I pick any tabletop professional at the top of the level, like it's gonna be super beautiful and fun and amazing, because you only succeed in this industry at that level if you are those things. There really aren't a lot of like, oh yeah, they're secretly totally a green M&Ms type. They're not. There's no one like that. I've never, ever met someone like the cameras go off and they just turn into a complete shitbird. It doesn't happen in TTRPGs. So I'm going to fill up my table with TTRPG people who are professionals at this thing, incredibly talented at the specific thing, because they are nice and lovely and wonderful. And I want to spend 3 hours with them regardless, but I'm not going to give specific names because you're not making me pick my favorite kids.
You know what? That's fair. That is fair. That is a fiery, fervent argument. I'll get you next time. But
you want to get me at a table then?
You don't need to push me to have a good time. Shoot, I gotta say, it's very funny. I love playing with you, and I still have a hard time asking you to play, just because it's just like you're so fucking awesome. And I'm
not why people don't ask me to games. I really just like, I always want to be playing more. My schedule's like usually too full, but it never feels full enough because like there are so many people I want to play with and they're doing cool things, and like oh my gosh, I hope, no, oh my god, please ask me the things. Oh my gosh, please.
It's very much that Little Mermaid. I want to be where the people are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love you. Please never don't ask me to a game. I sit here hoping that like maybe you might again.
And what's funny is like the more that I've kind of like, did you play games with me? Like more people have been like, I've been waiting for you to fucking ask me.
Yes, because you're a delight. And that isn't even like, look, like respectful, like that is also a you thing. That is not applicable to every single person across the industry. If you are getting that from a lot of people, that's because people want a game with you. There are plenty of people who might ask about a game and I'd be like, hi, I don't actually know anything about you at all. Or I played with you a little bit and it was a perfectly fine time. And they don't have that reaction, Noir. You're actually just lovely and charming and funny and nice and
that's
like
my
your
imposter syndrome. Act it up.
Your laugh just like activates
it's serotonin,
dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphin. Just like I get a beautiful morning ritual brunch cocktail of neurotransmitters directly up into the old cranium.
I did not come here for love. What is this? Get these positive emotions away from me.
Should have thought about that before having me on your stream, sucker.
You gotta remind me to talk to you about Kingsguard. There is a guest spot waiting for you whenever you're ready for it. But there is one last question that I wanted to get. Look, I got the cast in the audience going, yes, please keep going. Oh, no, don't keep going. Stop that. Anyway, you are God King Thanos of the TTRPG community for one day. You've got the Perfinity Stones and anything you will on the entire TTRPG community happens. If you want a company to go bankrupt, if you want a company to become the new wizards or whatever you want in this hobby happens for one day. What does the mighty Thanos do?
We get a nice big fat bank account to be run as a co-op through the guild of TTRPG professionals so that we can produce shows and ethically pay all of the performers and technical crew and moderators and community. I want this to be a self-sustaining profession where people can live and work and not have to worry that the people they love aren't getting taken care of, because it feels like disrespect if I can't give the people I so admire for their skill, their hard acquired by hours, by time, skill points. If I can't at least show that by helping them to survive under the capitalismo, because I want them to know that they're valued. That's like, as someone who co-owns a production company, the goal, the aim, what I want is for people to get proper scale. Not only because that means that they will come back and they will play with me, and the whole point of this was so that I get good games with really good people. Because I genuinely believe in the medium. I think it's the best way to generate IP for transmedia, because it's developing so much, so fast, so beautifully focus tested. Like, you can move it to comics, you can move it to animation. The plots pull beautifully. It's the best writer's room you could possibly ask for, because the writers are having so much more fun than any writer's room in the world. This is a valuable space that, if there could be constructed institutions around it, I think can do meaningful artistic work while the artists are feeling very joyous about it. Because these people love doing this more than any collaborative creative structure I get to see. Like, theater kids love plays, but damn, theater kids love the Lizard game. And in so doing, they put enough time, much in the same way that Mozart became a brilliant composer because he loved, just like fixatedly loved music and put a zillion hours into it, because that was the thing he was about. Because we love it so much, we put so many hours into this, that there is a cadre of incredibly creative, incredibly skilled people who, in a system that rewarded those characteristics, would live, would be able to do this creative expression that is valued by audiences, that connects with people, that tells meaningful stories, that can be art. And that if it had the institutions around it, had the potential for even more art, more experimentation within the medium, where we don't have to be cautious because we know that's the only way that we can maybe kind of eke something out, is to try to doing new things, even if they might cost a little bit of money. Having those structures enables creative freedom. And of course, that is what I snap. Yes, it is a cheat to say I snap a permanent infrastructural change in the whole industry. But what else is a snap if not cheats persevering?
Like, no, that's absolutely the point of the question. And I think a lot of the toxicity in this hobby comes from the frustration of seeing that the dream of doing this as a profession is possible.
It's so distant and creates crab pot because it's so zero sum, because there are only like the number of people doing this full time is so much smaller than being an A-list actor. Like, by the numbers, go try to become an A-list actor. It is more probable. By the numbers, do any creative profession, and you are more likely to be able to make a full time. So people who are at that, who really care about making this good stuff, should be able to, like, just by it. If you put that many hours into a thing, and it is rewarded by people caring about the thing. Health insurance, please. And so of course it's frustrating because, like, there's no good reason for it. That is the thing. It is the frustration of the arbitrariness of capitalist structures. I
crab pot. I try to tell a lot of people that fall into the crab pot, because at a time I was in the crab pot. The best way past that is every time that little bubble of jealousy comes up, create something and tell yourself, it's their turn now. It'll be my turn when it's my turn. Just keep working. Do it because you love it. And don't let that toxicity, don't let that bile build up, because that's only going to destroy you, man.
I think I understand the feeling. It in the same way of, like, a GM who created plans and has expectations in their own mind, and the player's frustrated. Yes, it's very human to feel frustration. It's like where the no GM comes from, right? It's like, no, the idea I had was cool. I'm going to say no to you so we can, like, move toward my idea, or like railroading. Like, an expectation frustrated feels bad, but the most generous GM, the GM you want to play with, is the one who acknowledges the human emotion, but plays through that which is good and generous to those around them. Like, it's very possible that, like, you know, there's no amount of hard work that makes anyone else have another Critical Role, whatever. The thing
True.
that everybody freaking says for a number of historical and systemic and institutional reasons, like that isn't a thing. But if that is the only thing that can bring you happiness, yes, disappointment is inevitable. Comparison is the death of joy. And even though sometimes your joy will be making death saves, and that's okay, and that is human, you can feel that.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I just think back to why I got into this. To play really good games with really creative people and make friends.
I don't think we're gonna find a better place to wrap the show up than that, because I'm about to fucking cry, yo. But I think that's where we're going to wrap for the day. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Wonderful.
I had no idea what to expect. I just had so much fun. You're such delight, both of you. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Seriously, a portion of the show that it is becoming a tradition is I'm going to bully you into coming again someday.
Bully the willing, my friend.
There's so much more that I think we could get out of just having a chat. But that is our. I know. I cannot tell you how blown my mind is that X Mansion doesn't have ramps. But that's been our show for today. I'm TheNoirEnigma. You can find me all over the internet as TheNoirEnigma. That's Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and maybe OnlyFans. Who knows? If you can catch me tomorrow behind the scenes. I'm the producer for Rivals of Waterdeep, so please check them out. They're on their 11th season. And tomorrow, I believe we are doing something with Cobalt Press for Roll20Con. I'm the GM of that, so I should know what we're doing, but I don't know what I'm doing.
That's what an inbox is for.
Monday is the return of Kingsguard. It is a 5th edition show set in my homebrew world of Gloria, which I have been playing again since I was 16. And this game is going to be the end of that setting. This is the last hurrah of Gloria. So I'm gonna be an emotional mess. I'm an
emotional mess just hearing about it.
And then let's see, on Wednesdays you can find me over on Follow Black Cats Gaming for Hexcrawl, our spy game with the creators of Spy Game. I play Agent Oppenheimer, who just had half of his face blown off by a drone, and so he may be going. He's replacing his eye with a tech eye, and maybe going by the new name Agent Odin. So we will see. And then on Wednesdays, please catch us for Woven Realm, the 13th Age game. We had a really feels heavy moment last session, so it's going to be full of feels. And then let's see. After that, keep an eye on my Twitter. I have projects in the works that I think you'll be pretty interested in. I'm super duper excited, especially after today, but you don't need to worry about it. So moving on to Anita.
Hi, I'm Anita, or Panita, or Critical Misses. You can find me everywhere online at Panita or at Critical Misses, because this is my channel. This is Ash. She's sweet.
Hi, Ash. You're perfect. I love you.
But I'm a TTRPG streamer, graphic designer, producer, and cat mom about the space. You can find me here for Mondays for Kingsguard. You can find me here behind the scenes Wednesdays for Dee's game Blue Ghosts. And Fridays, I am starting a Star Trek Adventures campaign called The Lost Frontier that I'm very excited for. We've got an amazing cast that I'm super excited to start playing.Ve got session 0 in a couple hours that we're going to go through.
We were talking for 3 hours and you just sat on that knowledge the whole
time. No, right?
I'm so excited.
Oh, man.
We'll talk later. We'll talk later about this.
And just so you know, they definitely want you to guess. Anyway, keep cool.
And then again, you can find us here for Morning Ritual every Saturday. Our guest next week is Little Red Dot, who we are playing in Into the Southlands game tomorrow with. That's a thing.
Yeah.
And Sam, tell us about yourself. Where can we find you?
I'm Sam DeLeve. If you make your perception check, you can find me. I am on Twitch at Delevely, DELEVELY, which has my full schedule on my About page. Of particular note right now, I'm going to just run it down. I rarely do, but there are some faces or chat names I don't recognize, so maybe an intro to stuff that I do. On Mondays on Q Times, I play a baby crystal dragon in space. It is a Spelljammer game. I am a baby dragon. That is all I've got for you. If you don't want to see it now, I have nothing else for you. No, actually, I have more. Adriana Cazador is a pirate, and Gina DeVivo is a penguin being.
So now
Bonnie Gordon is an old lady.
That's everything I need in my life.
And just the softest. There is also a cat dad who loves the creature and said he didn't want the pet. The greatest love of all time. It's just, there are good tropes here. All in a little space adventure with Baby Dragon. On Tuesdays, I have that morning science stream I was talking about, and then it's just chatting. We're just chatting. I also have a monthly coffee subscription membership show that we do for the Stream Punks. That production company I was talking about earlier, a one-on-one in Forbidden Lands called They Rode on Wolf. Yes, wheelchairs are a wonderful assistive device. You know what else is a great assistive device? A giant dire wolf. Yup. On Thursdays, I'm currently in a 4-shot of Eidolon Alpha for Phantom Tabletop. I am a siren cultist with a spicy rivalry with a pirate queen. It's a very, very good time and a very, very good group. Melly Doucette is DMing, Latia's playing in it. Cam Banks, the actual designer of the game, and D'Angelo Mario are in it. It's a great, I'm mostly playing with people I've never played with before, and they're all super wonderful friendship crossovers that I always want. And usually in this time slot, I'm doing my own streams of video games, but this was just too dang fun, which is why we're hosting instead. And at last, on Sundays, Power Play. I'm definitely a human. Okay, I try real hard. I'm trying. I'm better than I used to be. My GM very lovingly records all of the consequences of my actions. That's what happens when the game master remembers details. They punish you. Every time I think I'm ready, I'm not. I discovered that last week. Join us this week for even more of everything being absolutely not fine on Power Play. All my one-offs are at Tchaikovsky, ChaiKovsky. Thank you both so much for having me. I want to just have like 3 more hours of conversation with you as people, and then 3 hours on camera, just like on, off, just like switch. Like you were way too charming.
I'm gonna start opening up group chats. Screw it. I'm always so worried. Like, do I talk to people as a people, or do I? I'm gonna do that. But I do want to say one last thing. I'll never forgive you, Latia, for not inviting me to that table with you with Steph. I'll never forgive you. You hear me?
Noir and Latia have known each other since like high school.
Could I, I'm my character is like closely, we did a session 0 live, which I almost never do. We always do them like off camera so that we sort of have flexibility to swap. And we did this one live. It's up on YouTube. Yay, plugs. But like I built my character off of hers, and like they bounce in this really lovely way. Gosh, it's my first time actually playing with her. I've never played with her before, and it's such a treat.
Latia's so good.
So
forgive you, Latia.
You just have to make a new table that has both of us at it.
You know,
that's true.
I'm gonna eat more of her chicken. All right,
this is what happens if you're GM. You can just make games happen.
You know what? I'm always so worried about like, what if I'm not good? Anyway,
that's been our show.
I've got that look from so many people I admire. I'm starting to think it's me.
Please.
That's been our show. Well, who are we going to raid? I'm seeing that. Let's see. Pleasantly Twisted is on. So let's
TPK
go.
Roleplays online.
Are they?
Yeah, we could throw some love over to TPK.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Underdog.
We'll send some love over to TPK Roleplay. Thank everybody for stopping by. And thank you, Sam, for chatting with us. You are amazing. And as your username on Twitch is, you are definitely the lovely.
Thank you for doing me the favor of getting an excuse to talk to y'all for 3 hours.
No.
Seriously. Y'all are geniuses. This is brilliant. This format.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for stopping by. But until next time, the ritual has concluded. Bye, everybody.
Yeet.